Luffy versus Kaido. The clash between these two Pirate King hopefuls has raged on for quite some time. The draconic apex predator of the Beast Pirates has, at this point, proven himself to be the dominant force between the two, having emerged victorious from each of their previous bouts. Having previously knocked the Rubber Man into the turbulent waters below Onigashima, Luffy's tenacity and uncanny survivability have, among other things, garnered the most wanted Yonko's respect and attention. The battle at this point is hardly as one-sided as it may have once appeared to be. In the pursuit of ultimate victory, these two combatants have resolved to give this fight all that they have, free of regrets. Chapter 1042. The third battle between Luffy and Kaido rages on as it nears its climax. Luffy has been pushed to his absolute limit, and his Gear 4 transformation is dangerously close to ending. If he doesn't finish Kaido off before Gear 4 runs out, it's all over. Luffy rushes forward. Smoke obscures the battlefield. Kaido's voice booms out.
Thunder Bellow! Bagua!
Kaido emerges from the smoke and lands a direct hit with his spiked club. Luffy is sent reeling from the blow and goes crashing into a wall. The air for Gear 4 begins to escape, but he managed to get it under control. Luffy commands his body not to give out on him yet. Kaido only laughs in his bloodthirsty, drunken state. Luffy immediately springs back up and prepares for his final attack. He admits to himself that if this last hit doesn't finish the fight, then he's done for. Kaido and Luffy charge at one another, ready to settle things once and for all. Kaido shouts for Luffy to show him what he's got. A second before they clash, a CP0 agent appears behind Luffy, catching both Luffy and Kaido off guard. The agent uses Iron Body to paralyze Luffy right as Kaido brings down his club. While completely defenseless, Luffy takes the full brunt of Kaido's attack. Chapter 1043. The strike is so powerful that it shatters the ground beneath them. All the remaining air escapes Luffy's body as he lays motionless on the ground. Just off Onigashima, Momonosuke says in disbelief that he can no longer hear Luffy's voice. There's a moment of silence as Kaido, the King of Beasts, is officially declared the winner of the battle on the roof of Onigashima. Kaido stares down the CP0 agent and calmly asks him if he's prepared for what happens next. There is only one fate for those that interfere in Kaido's battles. The agent only tips his hat in response, accepting what's to come. Once more, Kaido brings his club down, this time with enough force to collapse the roof and kill the agent. Another CP0 agent tips his hat as a simple goodbye as he watches on from afar. As the ceiling breaks apart, Kaido enters in his dragon form and declares to everyone that Straw Hat Luffy is dead and that Momonosuke must surrender to him. Law confirms that Luffy's voice has vanished. Kid, Law, and Chopper all mourn Luffy as Nami boldly shouts that Luffy couldn't have lost and that he's still alive. Kaido and his men attack the Alliance, determined to finish them off. Despite the tragic news, they all decide to not surrender and fight until their dying breaths. Back on the rooftop, Luffy's lifeless body begins to stir. A heartbeat echoes out. Zunisha calls out to Momonosuke and tells him that he can hear it. He can hear the drums of liberation for the first time in 800 years. Joy Boy has returned. Suddenly, Luffy is smiling again and in the middle of a new transformation. Before we continue with the final battle between Luffy and Kaido, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload. And smash that like button for some plot armor today. Chapter 1044. Luffy wonders why he's still standing after losing to Kaido. Despite everything, he's still having fun. Luffy lets out a laugh that rings out over Onigashima. Everyone on the island can hear Luffy's heartbeat. Everyone is astonished that Luffy is alive. The heartbeat even wakes Sanji up. Far away, the Gorosei discuss Luffy and his devil fruit. For 800 years, the world government has been trying to capture the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and they've failed every time. They state that it's almost like the devil fruit has intentionally been trying to avoid them. They also reveal that the Gomu Gomu no Mi is a Zoan type and has the name of a god. The true name of the Gomu Gomu no Mi is the Zoan type Hito Hito no Mi, mythical type, model Nika. A silhouette of Luffy appears in front of the moon. The Nika Devil Fruit gives its user a body made of rubber and allows them to fight in whatever way they please. The sun god, Nika, is the warrior of liberation and brings smiles to people's faces. Once the Devil Fruit has awakened, the user receives greater strength and freedom. In all the world, there is no power more ridiculous. Luffy dances with joy and notices that his heartbeat sounds funny. Now he can do everything he wants to do. He can continue to fight. He states this is the pinnacle of what he can do. Gear 5. Luffy then releases a massive burst of Conqueror's Haki that knocks out Kaido's men. An enormous hand erupts out of the ceiling and grabs Kaido in his dragon form, yanks Kaido's massive body through the ceiling and back on top of the roof. He then spins Kaido in circles at incredible speeds and repeatedly smashes him to the floor. Luffy laughs again as Kaido recovers. He thanks Luffy for surviving before immediately firing a blast of fire. Luffy is laughing so hard now that he's on the floor now and almost doesn't notice Kaido's attack. When he finally does, his eyes bug out and his jaw drops like a vintage cartoon character. Thinking fast, Luffy grabs the floor and pulls it up, turning it into rubber and using it as a shield. Kaido's blast ricochets off the floor and goes flying back into him. Once again, Luffy can't help but laugh. Kaido apologizes for the CP0 agent that ruined their fight and says that he didn't want to win that way. Luffy tells him not to worry about it and that they can finally finish their fight. Now, with the power of a god, Luffy begins his final fight with one of the 4 Yonko, Kaido. Chapter 1045. As Luffy bounces on the floor that is now made of rubber, Kaido tells him that he was sure that he had killed him. Luffy agrees while casually displaying his new form and abilities. Kaido correctly deduces that Luffy has achieved his awakening and can now transfer his rubber powers to other things. He also notices that Luffy's powers aren't working like a Paramecia type Devil Fruit. Luffy's new transformation is the trademark of a Zoan type. Before Luffy can react, Kaido rushes forward and attempts to crush Luffy in his jaws. Instead of breaking free, Luffy goes down Kaido's throat, punching and kicking inside his body. Suddenly, Luffy takes on his Gomu Gomu balloon form, stretching Kaido's body and causing him to float. Yamato and Momonosuke are shocked by the strange things happening to Kaido's body. Kaido himself is surprised that Luffy can even make his body rubber. From inside Kaido, Luffy sees 2 lights. Out of nowhere, Luffy launches his arms through Kaido's eyes and grabs his nose. Using his nose as leverage, Luffy rockets himself out of Kaido's mouth. With a devilish smile, Luffy releases all the air out of his Gomu Gomu balloon, hurling himself directly into the sky. He disappears into storm clouds above the battlefield. From the heavens, Luffy's voice roars, "Gomu Gomu Giant!" A gargantuan version of Luffy falls from the clouds on top of Kaido. He reacts quickly though and manages to bite Luffy. This doesn't stop Luffy though. He grabs Kaido by his horns and midsection and starts to use the dragon like a jump rope. Kaido launches another fire blast that completely engulfs Luffy. The sheer size of the explosion is roughly the same size as Onigashima. A charred Luffy plummets out of the air before shaking off the damage and running across the sky, leaving a trail of fire. As he nears Kaido, who's transformed back into his hybrid form, Luffy winds up a punch. But Kaido acts first and bats Luffy's head through the roof, terrifying everyone below. Kaido compares Luffy's new powers to a comic strip. Once Luffy pulls his head out of the room, he collapses, exhausted. Kaido points out that he's reached the limit of Gear 5. Luffy attempts to prove him wrong, but quickly reverts to his normal form and even admits that he's tired. Kaido promises that Luffy's story will be told after he dies, but Luffy rejects the offer. Nothing after death holds any meaning to him. Momonosuke notices that Luffy's voice is close to dying out, but Luffy refuses to let things end here. He begins to recite the names of the people he's fighting for: Momonosuke, Tama, Kinemon, and Pedro. As he says the names, he starts to reactivate Gear 5. Without any fear of dying, Luffy compels his heart to keep beating. Now, back in his strongest form, Luffy charges right back into battle. Kaido prepares another swing, and Yamato shouts a warning, but Kaido still connects. The force of the blow deforms Luffy's face, causing it to wrap around the spikes. He runs away from Kaido's next attack, but the Yonko catches him, slamming Luffy into the floor. Luffy turns the floor into rubber again, making him spring off the ground like a bouncy ball. Landing on a stray pillar, Luffy counts down and launches himself at Kaido. While sailing through the air, Luffy twists his body into a tight curl and unleashes a barrage of punches at Kaido. As Luffy approaches, Kaido wonders to himself about Luffy's new power. In all of his decades of constant battle, Kaido has never seen anyone fight so freely. As Kaido prepares to intercept Luffy, he proclaims that no one in the world can defeat him. Determined to prove him wrong, Luffy lands a direct hit on Kaido. The punch to the face is so strong that it stretches out the back of his head. Kaido is knocked flat on his back, and with a smile, Luffy asks him, "Isn't this fun?" Chapter 1046. As carefree as ever, Luffy asks Kaido what he should call his last attack while bouncing off the ground. In complete bewilderment, Kaido asks Luffy, "Who is he?" Zunesha still hears the beat of Luffy's heart and is overjoyed at the return of Joy Boy. He believes fate is at work and can't help but put his faith in Luffy, the new Joy Boy. With full confidence, Luffy answers Kaido's question by boldly declaring that he is Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will surpass Kaido and become the king of the pirates. Kaido is pleased that Luffy hasn't lost his fighting spirit and explains that awakenings occur when a user's mind and body catch up with their Devil Fruit powers. Fighting Luffy has cost Kaido quite a lot of things he's worked for over the years. His followers and his castle have all been destroyed by his war with the Straw Hats. Luffy retorts that there's more he wants to take from Kaido. The two fighters then exchange a barrage of attacks. Luffy's body wraps around Kaido's club and Kaido's body distorts with each punch that Luffy lands. The attacks leave each of them temporarily winded. Kaido reminds Luffy that their battle has engulfed Onigashima in flames. All the men that Luffy brought with him will soon die a fiery death. None of this information affects Luffy though. He trusts his allies to take care of themselves and tells Kaido that his only job is bringing him down. Once more, the two engage in battle as Kaido sends out shockwaves of air that Luffy dodges. As the battle continues, Yamato warns Momonosuke that it's up to him to make flame clouds soon. Although Kaido is still alive and his own clouds keep Onigashima afloat, once Luffy beats him, they'll disappear. Momonosuke is their only hope of keeping Onigashima from crashing into the ground and killing everyone. As Yamato tells Momonosuke that Onigashima will fall, we see Luffy holding a bolt of lightning descending on Kaido. Both fighters are excited to see how this next phase of the battle will turn out. Chapter 1047. Kaido laughs to himself about Luffy's ridiculous new abilities as the Straw Hat captain hurls the lightning bolt. Kaido dashes out of the way as the bolt explodes across the ground. He readies his swing and hits a home run off Luffy that sends him flying. Luffy manages to catch himself by grabbing another lightning bolt. After twirling around the bolt, he slingshots himself back at Kaido, who tells him that abilities alone can't conquer the world. Luffy inflates his leg, preparing for a kick, but Kaido leaps over it and smashes his club into Luffy's face. Kaido continues to explain that the world won't bend to the will of Devil Fruit users. Gold D. Roger didn't have any Devil Fruit powers, but he still became king of the pirates. As Luffy is still falling, Kaido bats him to the ground, which bounces him back up to Kaido. As he prepares for a third swing, Kaido shouts that Haki is the only thing that matters and that it can transcend all. In a desperate attempt to protect himself, Luffy coats his arms in armament Haki and tries to block the swing. Kaido still breaks through Luffy's defense and severely injures him. Despite the damage he just took, Luffy was able to grab a hold of Kaido before sailing into the storm clouds again. He tries to break Luffy's grip on him, but he refuses to let go, even after being struck with Kaido's club. Kaido transforms into his full dragon form and points out that he can find Luffy's position in the storm clouds by following his arms. He then sends a hail of wind blades at Luffy, knowing that he still has a weakness to cutting attacks. Within the storm clouds, Luffy endures as the blades slice into his body, but still, Luffy doesn't lose his grip on Kaido. Not too far away, the people of Flower Capital celebrate as they send their wishes into the heavens on sky lanterns. In the distance, Onigashima can be seen descending. Back on the rooftop, Kaido demands Luffy to come back down and shoots a flame blast into the clouds. The attack chars Luffy's body once again, but still, Luffy holds on. Within Onigashima, the Alliance notices that Kaido's flame clouds are getting weaker and the castle is falling. Boss Hyogoro points out that the battle can only end in two outcomes. If Luffy does defeat Kaido, the castle will fall and everyone will die. But if they survive, it means that Kaido has won and their children and wives will go back to being slaves. The men of the Alliance gladly accept their deaths if it means their families can go on to live prosperous lives. They cheer on Luffy and tell him not to hold back against Kaido. Their lives shouldn't worry Luffy at all. From outside the castle, Momonosuke hears Luffy shout his name. Both Momonosuke and Yamato look up to see Luffy emerge from the storm clouds with a colossal fist coated in haki aimed right for Kaido. Luffy tells Momonosuke that he's ready to end this, but Onigashima is in his way. Yamato realizes that Luffy's planning on punching through the island. Luffy's fist not only dwarfs Kaido's dragon form, but is about the same size as the entire island of Onigashima. Luffy tells Momonosuke that he has faith that he can move the island. Chapter 1048. Momonosuke shouts at Luffy that he isn't able to move the island, but Luffy is no longer listening. He's already started compressing his fist to add more power. With no other option, Momonosuke slams his head into the island, desperate to move it. As Kaido and Luffy face each other down, Kaido tells him that he has no intention of dodging the attack. He'll take the punch full on. Kaido begins to breathe fire around himself as he reminds Luffy that Oden, the hero of Wano, burned to death 20 years ago. Kaido's flame breath coats his entire body in fire. He tells Luffy that Wano has been a lawless place ever since Oden's death. He mocks Luffy by telling him that the people here have been waiting for heroes like him and his friends to save them. The heat from Kaido's flame coating is enough to finally make Luffy let go of him. Kaido reaffirms that he's not moving. Luffy's massive fist won't even touch him. It'll melt from his flames before it makes contact. As if to prove his point, one of his horns on top of the skull dome begins to melt from the heat. Luffy brings his fist down and remembers his haki training with Hyogoro. Hyogoro's advanced armament haki training taught Luffy how to fight without even making physical contact. Luffy promises to smash Kaido all the way down to the bottom of hell. The Flame Dragon and the new Joy Boy clash, creating a giant shockwave. The two struggle against one another with everything they have, desperate to win. The Alliance continues to cheer Luffy on as they recall all the tragedy and defeats they suffered at the hands of Kaido and Orochi after Oden's death. Chapter 1049. While the two powerhouses clash, Luffy begins to feel the effects of Kaido's fire and winces at the heat. Kaido commends Luffy for making it this far, but reminds him that he can't change the world. During the struggle, Kaido remembers moments from his life. When he was 10, Kaido was known as the ultimate soldier in his homeland. Years later, the king of his home sold him to the world government to pay the heavenly tribute and to earn a spot at the next world summit. Kaido would easily escape the world government and only return to custody when he was hungry. Years after that, he would end up on Fuloled and join the Rocks Pirates. Eventually, the Rocks Pirates were beaten, and Kaido created his own crew, called the Beasts Pirates. Kurozumi approaches Kaido and offers him an alliance with Orochi. He declares his intention to build a world where strength determines one's worth. Later on, he talks to King about Joy Boy. Kaido claims to know Joy Boy's true identity. Back in the present, the remaining CP0 agent flees as Kaido and Luffy clash. Yamato screams that Luffy will win this and that Momonosuke has to create the flame clouds now. Momonosuke tries his hardest to command his own flame clouds to appear, but nothing happens. Those inside Onigashima notice that the island is falling. Yamato sees Kaido's flame clouds vanish as the island begins to plummet, indicating that Kaido is putting in his all against Luffy. As Luffy and Kaido push against one another with all their strength, Kaido asks Luffy what kind of world can Luffy create. Through gritted teeth, Luffy gives his answer at the exact same time. Momonosuke finally manages to produce his own flame clouds and move Onigashima away from the battle. At that moment, Luffy breaks through Kaido's flames, hitting him with his strongest punch ever. As Kaido experiences the full force of Luffy's might, he shouts that he'll make a world where his friends can eat as much food as they want. Luffy's punch sends Kaido rocketing down with thunderous force. He falls so fast that he practically becomes a bullet burrowing into the ground, leaving a dragon-sized hole in the earth. While still being pushed through the ground, Kaido recalls the end of his conversation with King about Kaido. Kaido believed that Joy Boy would be the man that defeats him in the future. With a smile, King tells him that if that's the case, they'll never see Joy Boy. But Kaido was right after all. Momonosuke safely lands Onigashima in the Flower Capital. Although he's exhausted, he's also pleased that he was able to save everyone. Luffy falls from the sky, unconscious from pushing his body to the absolute limit. Chapter 1050. Kaido continues to smash through the ground, forming a hole the same length that Big Mom created. As he crashes into the magma pit that Big Mom is still inside, Yamato rushes to catch Luffy. He lands safely within Yamato's arms as the Alliance realizes that Luffy has defeated Kaido. Celebrations spark all across Wano. With Kaido now gone, Wano is free from the tyranny of the Beast Pirates. The party is temporarily interrupted by an earthquake that rocks Wano. The origin of the shaking comes from deep within the magma pool that holds both Kaido and Big Mom. The crater made by Kaido's impact has caused a seismic event, triggering a volcanic eruption. The undersea explosion sends both Kaido and Big Mom to places unknown as Luffy is officially declared the winner of the final battle in the skies over Wano. Thank you for watching to the end. Until next time, keep that plot armor on you. I'm Anthony Fan, and have a great day. Goodbye.